You already know that storytelling can be great for your business, or at least I hope you know that if you're listening to this show. You understand that stories are the way to create connections with your audience or your clients or your community. You understand that in terms of conversion, people buy emotionally and then they justify logically. So if you deliver them value through a story, they are more likely to take action. They are more likely to convert. But here's the thing. Storytelling is not just a marketing tool to sell your product or your service or your offer. It's not just a community building tool with your customers and your clients and your audience. It is a communication tool. That means internally and externally, you have to communicate well. That means all the way up and all the way down and across all of the departments of your business. The problem is, it's not good enough to be a good storyteller anymore, not in 2025. You have to have someone who is responsible for ensuring that that story is the same no matter who is telling it. And luckily for you, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where we break down the art and science of storytelling. My name is Bennett. I am your host, and I'm a filmmaker and an author on a quest to understand how we can tell better stories so that we can do better work and make the world a better place. Each episode, I host one of the world's best storytellers to help you understand how to leverage storytelling to increase your sales, deepen your connections, and serve your audiences better. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab podcast. Guess what? This is episode 200. This show has been up for, I've lost track how many years, 2019, 6 years, something like that. This is the 200th episode and the first episode of season 14. And today we are going to talk about a chief storytelling officer, also known as a chief storyteller. What is that? Well, let's get into it. Now, a couple seasons ago, I had on the podcast a man named Farris, who is arguably, I believe, the first person with this title. Nelson still works at Nike, has been there for 50 years, half a century, which is wild to imagine. And I believe he was the first person ever bestowed the title of Chief Storytelling Officer. So I had him on the show. I was so interested. I was so intrigued by what that role means, especially for such a story-first, story-driven company like Nike. Like, how does one become the chief storytelling officer, the leader of the story of a company like that? Well, he told me. And so after that conversation, I started looking into more about this role. And many years ago, decades ago, big companies like Microsoft and SAP and even Etsy started having this role, chief storytelling officer. Now, if you go to LinkedIn and you type that in, there's thousands of chief storytellers out there. It is becoming a more and more prominent role. And that's because it's becoming more and more important to have this role filled at your company, no matter how big or small that you are. And if you can't afford or justify a dedicated person, someone needs to be in charge of the tasks and responsibilities of this role, which we're going to talk about today. That someone might be you. This is not something that you should overlook and neglect because, as I said in the intro, it's no longer good enough to be a good storyteller. We all know that. All the brands, all your competitors, all the people in your space know that you have to tell stories. This is an old drumbeat that we've heard for many years at this point. And all of the tools that are available to folks out there, the ones that are available to you, help people tell stories better now. And we all have access to the same things. Especially with AI coming out, people are going to be able to pump out their stories faster and faster. But the problem is, they're going to pump out the same stories, same style, and same type of stories for everybody. The same slop. You've probably already seen that. So it is going to be more and more imperative that you have someone in charge of the overarching brand narrative that you stand for as a company in a way, in a manner that it cascades all the way down from the top peak vision, the overall long-term vision of your company, of your brand, down to the mission, down to the brand, the marketing, the product, the advertising, the sales. All of those channels and all of your departments must be aligned in that overall brand narrative so that There is cohesion with your story, so that no matter who is telling it, it's aligned, it's unified, and your people, your customers, understand what is a you story versus a me story. Okay, Rain, you might say, sounds cool. I'm all in. I'm ready to go. But what exactly does that role mean? What does it do? Let's get into it. Now, I want to go ahead and start off and say that this is not one of those kind of made up C-suite titles that you might see when someone says, like, I'm the CEO, the Chief Energy Officer, right? And it's just like, all right, this is just kind of a play on words that you're doing for branding. This is not that. This is a real position that thousands of businesses around the world are seeking out and filling because it is extremely important, especially in this day and age. So what does that person do? What are they tasked with? What do they do day to day? Here's the thing. It varies. It's different for all different types of organizations and institutions and companies and brands and businesses, because what you do and how you do it and the story that you have and the story that you tell, they're all different. It varies. That's great. That's important. It's a little harder to understand, which is why I want you to tune into this episode and the following episodes of this season, because it's a little hard to understand because it varies for everybody. But that's really important because your brand is different than other people's, even in your space. If we're all doing the same thing, the same way, then there's no way to differentiate yourself. And then the only differentiator becomes price with your competitor. And that is a race to the bottom. And that is not a race that I want to be a part of, my friends. If you do, good luck to you. But the goal that we're trying to achieve is how to stand out and how to make deep, long-lasting connections and relationships that are built on trust with the community, with the audience, with the customer base that you have. And the only way to do that is to understand how to clearly, effectively, efficiently, and consistently deliver your story. So after talking to Nelson Farris, I've interviewed multiple chief storytelling officers over the past 6 months or 9 months. And one thing that I've learned is that all of their paths are different. How they became a chief storyteller, some of them chose that title, some of them were asked to have that title even though they were reluctant to, some of them were anointed with that title. They all have different paths on how to get there, and they all have different day-to-day tasks that they do. But the unifying factor is they are all the ones who are in charge of making sure there's consistency in the brand narrative. That means it's a part of their being. Nelson was already doing this job, and most likely the person that becomes your chief storyteller, whether that's you or someone else, is already effectively doing that. They are the ones out there, boots on the ground, talking to people, learning from people, telling the stories, advising the social media team, even if they're not on the social media team. It goes so far beyond the stories that you outwardly tell, like your content or your social media manager or even your creative agency. This is so much more than that. I had one of them tell me, one of the CSOs that I interviewed said, it's not a communications tool. It's not a comms role. It's an engagement role. That means engaging with all of your stakeholders. That means the person in charge of the narrative to your investors, to your internal team of all departments, of course, externally to your customer and client base and your community and audience, but not just that. It's up and down, as I said earlier, internally and externally, and wide across all the different departments that make up your business. So what are some of the things they do? Well, they help establish your why, your purpose. You've heard this a lot, your vision, like why your company exists. What is the ultimate transformation that you are trying to create in the world and the lives of the people that you want to impact in the world? So Nike, yes, you want to sell shoes, but what are you really trying to do? Well, the chief storyteller helps understand and articulate that what we're really trying to do is empower everyday people, normal people, if you will, whatever that means, to be athletes, to consider themselves athletes, no matter if they're the weekend warrior type or they're, like me, the 40-year-old still playing, men's league soccer on Wednesday nights, or they're trying to run their first marathon or whatever they're doing. It's trying to help people find their inner athlete and empower them. That's ultimately what Nike is trying to do. Just do it, right? We'll get into that later in the season, but that is a representation of that core vision, purpose, that why that Nike has. And that shows exactly how it filters through and cascades all the way out to ad campaigns. It should have that type of alignment. So they are the person that understands and helps articulate the why. They also help translate that why to all of the different departments. Here is my favorite thing about a CSO, Chief Storytelling Officer. They need to have a seat at every department's table. That means product, that means marketing, that means sales. They are the liaison. They are the translator to all of those different departments. You don't want your sales team saying something different than your content marketing team or the people, trying to raise funds and talking to your investors. There needs to be alignment. So they are the person that can translate that to all of the other people, to empower their salespeople, for example, to carry that story. That is what they do. Now, when I say they have a seat at the table, they're not deciding what product. Let's say it's the product table. You got a product meeting with engineers and product owners, etc. The CSO is not the person deciding what features to build. That's the product team's responsibility. So it's not about stepping on toes or overstepping your responsibilities. It's about collaboration. So the CSO in the product team meeting is ensuring that the products and features that they build connect back to that purpose and that why and that story. Like, is this feature carrying out the promise that we gave in our vision? That's what they're there to do. What else do? They are involved with people in the public. They are involved with listening. One of the things that Nelson used to do in the early days of Nike is they would go to high school track meets and bring the shoes that they were developing in their trunk, right? And Adidas couldn't do this at the time. Converse couldn't do this at the time. They were behemoths. But since Nike was a scrappy startup, and they were more agile, they could. And it allowed them to listen to their customers and learn what they liked, what they didn't like. And then, of course, bring that back to the team, which translated into the product features. But that is relationship building. That is what they did. So listening is just as important as your storytelling. The chief storytelling officer understands how to absorb and mine for those stories from their customers and from their own team. Almost everyone that I talked to had some practice, campfire stories, story chats, whatever, of mining for stories from within the company. And also, every team or every CSO that I talked to, when referencing their team, no matter how big or small, conducted their culture in the same way, and that is to say, open. Even Nelson told me at Nike, anybody could come up with an idea. There is trust there. Because of that openness, that leads to better collaboration, and better collaboration leads to innovation. All of them had, in film terminology, it's an open set, right? Anybody can come up with an idea. Now, not all companies and not all film productions operate that way. A lot of them operate in silos, but I'm telling you, as we move forward, in this day and age where everything is going faster and you have so many more tech tools to use, the ability to collaborate creatively and communicate and connect with humans is going to be more important. Understanding your unique story is way more important than telling stories. There has to be alignment. That's what the CSO does. Now, I'm extra excited about this, and this is part of the journey that I'm going to take you on this season and the rest of this year and into next year and the next decade, is I am writing a book for you to be the guide when you don't have a chief storytelling officer and you maybe can't justify or afford a dedicated person for that role. You might be a small, scrappy startup. You might be a small nonprofit. You might not even have a CMO, a chief marketing officer. So yeah, Rain, how can we justify or afford a chief storyteller? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But again, someone has to take the mantle and ensure that these responsibilities do not go neglected, or you will fall by the wayside. So it can be someone who is on your communications team. It can be your video person or your content creator. Or it can be someone like Nelson, who started off in sales and was floating around. There was even one that I met that was director of philosophy, is what that became. Now I think that was at Patagonia, so it took a while to evolve to that. But the point is, it doesn't matter what department this person is in, because it's not rigid with its boundaries. So if you can't justify that, I am writing the book, the manual for your team to keep in the conference room or the boardroom so that you can reference it at any day to understand, like, how do we build a system of storytelling so that there is alignment vertically and horizontally with the work that we do here at our business. I am finishing this book right now. I'm in the middle of the deadline for the rough draft of the manuscript. It will be out in the spring of 2026. Please ask me any questions along the way. You can always reach me at rainbennett.com or the storytellinglabpodcast.com. And I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to break down this position, each solo episode of this season as we move forward through the rest of 2025. But also the people that I'm talking to on the show are going to help you understand, like, how do we find and build a culture that creates internal and external alignment through our brand, our marketing, our communications, our sales, our recruitment, our team building, all of these things. This is why I am writing this book. You are who I am writing this book for. And when you think about it, who is this person? Who is the CSO for us? It might be you. And if it is you, then this book is going to help you understand how you set up that system from the top down to ensure that your story has alignment, and it is the same story whether I'm telling it from what I heard, or you're telling it to your audience, or your investors are telling it to their friends to try to get them to invest, or anybody out there in the world. You have to have it understood so well that there is not misalignment on any of the lines. It is one singular narrative thread, and all your communication has to be woven in that singular thread. So stay tuned for this season 14 of the Storytelling Lab. Stay tuned for the book, The Chief Storytelling Officer, A Guide to Leading Your Brand with a Story, coming out in 2026. Appreciate you all so much. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited for this season of the show. Let me know if you have any questions. Drop us a review if you haven't. Let me know if you have any suggestions about great guests to have on the show. I could not do this show without you and your support for all of these years, and we're going to keep it going to help you tell your stories better. My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.